This is George Dionne with Metal Express Radio, and I'm here with Steve Mann of the band Lionheart. How you doing, Steve?
I'm good, thank you, George. Great to talk to you.
If I knew absolutely nothing about Lionheart, how would you describe the group's music to me?
I would say we came out of the new wave of British heavy metal, but we fairly quickly changed our sound to more American sounding. And I would say what really defines the band: great vocal harmonies, great guitar harmonies, great songs, and great singer. And I think that all those combination of things, I think, is what defines Lionheart's sound.
Excellent. Your new album, The Reality of Miracles, is going to be released on July 31st. What songs are you most proud of and why? And you can't say all of them. It's all of them. I know it's all of them.
Okay, all of them but one.
There you go.
We all have different favorites. I think it's a sign of the strength of the album, or the strength of the songs on the album, that everybody in the band and people in the management, they all have a different favorite song. But speaking for myself personally, I would have to say that my favorite song is Still It Rains on Planet Earth, which is the last song on the album. The reason why is because it has a very positive message. I think we're going through very hard times at the moment, everybody in the world, and having lockdown because of the coronavirus, and many people have lost their jobs or haven't been able to work. And we just felt that we wanted to kind of put some kind of positiveness back. And I think this song kind of really says it all. And it finishes with a section which is a guitar solo which kind of builds up and up and up. It's based on a classical piece by Mozart, and it ends on this big D major chord, which for us is a kind of a very positive ending to the album. And we're kind of hoping that through this music it does help to kind of make people feel positive about their lives, and that this whole thing hopefully is soon going to be over. So I think from my own personal point of view, that song I think really sums up what the album is about.
The whole album's great. I mean, from top to bottom, it doesn't sound like you have any what I would say filler.
Thank you.
You got all powerful singles there, and you have an excellent singer in Lee Small. And I was wondering how you guys ended up finding him to sing for the group.
That was Rocky, the bass player. He, we originally wanted to use Chad Brown, who was the singer from the 1980s. But when we contacted him, he's given up the music business and is doing other things. So we had to find somebody else. And we put the word out a bit, and then somebody contacted Rocky and said, "Have you heard of Lee Small, or have you tried Lee Small?" And we hadn't heard of him, but we contacted him and we checked him out on YouTube and decided that we really liked what we heard. So we got together in a rehearsal room, and the minute we started working with Lee, we just knew that was the one. His voice was powerful, it was soulful, it was high, low, had the all of the stuff that we were looking for in a singer. And we immediately knew that's the guy. And on top of that, he's a lovely guy as well. He's a very, very kind guy. And it's very important to us that we all get on really well with each other, that we're very good friends. And he came straight in and just slotted in absolutely perfectly. I think he was sent. It was destiny somehow.
Yeah. I mean, that sometimes you see the writing on the wall. You're like, hey, we got to run with it.
Absolutely. And I think that was the case with Lee.
I read that the COVID-19 lockdowns were partially responsible for getting the album finished.
Well, basically, I mean, we're all doing different things. And in my case, I was working with McAuley Schenker, and I was also working with The Sweet. And so it was a very busy time for me. So every time I had a few days off, I would do a bit to the album. And but then I had to go off and do something else, or rehearse or whatever. So we never really got a run at it. It was always kind of a little bit here and a little bit there. When COVID-19 came along, it was basically you must stay at home. I thought, great. this gives me a chance to sit in the studio and just work on the album. And it was fantastic. I think, because I could concentrate and just work straight through, I think it probably ended up a better album because of it, because I could really, really focus my mind on the job that needed to be done. So terrible as COVID-19 has been, for us as a band and for me as a producer, it did have its advantages.
So are you a musician that generally likes to be on the road all the time?
No, I love the studio. I like the fact that in the studio you can go in and put down ideas and then they're there forever. If you want them to be. And it's a bit like being a painter, I suppose. You don't paint and then throw it away and then go and paint another one the next night and then throw that away. I love playing live and touring is fantastic, but I could never live without going in the studio and putting down music that would live on forever. I think getting a balance between the two is the most important thing. But I'm not one of these people that thrives by being on the road for 3 years, for sure. I like to come home and just chill out at home for a while.
So you produced the new album, correct?
I did, yes.
Do you find there's a little difficulty in producing yourself? You have to become kind of your own critic, or you got to kind of balance all the guys in the band versus what you did?
Yes. I started producing other bands back in the 90s. And so I had a lot of experience as a producer. And then when it came to Lionheart, doing the Lionheart albums, we've used a lot of different producers. Some have been good, some have been pretty bad, and in every case, it's been a question of, because I've grown up with my own. I mean, I had my own studio when I was about 16 or 17, so I've always had my own studio. So engineering has been kind of bred into me, and so I've always had this situation where I've had to try and explain to the producer exactly how I think it should sound. And, I've said, look, do you mind if I go to the desk and I've EQ'd it or added an effect or something? And in the end, I thought, this is just taking too long. It's having to go through two people here, which is a bit daft because, if I can just do it myself, then the creative flow is not disturbed. So I love producing and playing at the same time. I just find it very, very creative. And I also do the mastering as well for exactly the same reason, that I know what it is I want to hear. And I know a lot of people will say it's best to send it to a mastering engineer because you have a different set of ears. And I think in 99% of cases, I would agree with that. But in my case, I know exactly what I want. And when I mix with the mastering in my head already. And towards the end of the album, I do all three processes. I do the recording, the mixing, and the mastering all as one process. And I'll go from one to the other. So they all work hand in hand with each other. And I find that's a very, very powerful way of working, because sometimes, for example, when you're mastering a track, you might think, that would work better if the guitar was playing a D instead of an E. It would just sound better. So I go back to the mix, remix it, and then go back to the mastering. And I find that a very productive, creative way of working.
Excellent. Do you think that the internet is a better way to promote music versus the 1980s label model?
In a lot of ways, yes. In some ways, no. The whole model at the moment is very bad for musicians earning a living.
Yes, financially, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, financially, streaming has killed it. I mean, obviously the first major problem was MP3s, or going back a bit further, cassettes and MP3s, downloads. One of the things about streaming is that it has monetized the business again. People are paying their $15 whatever it is per month to Spotify and Tidal and places like this. It's just that they haven't yet learned to pay the musicians. They make their millions, their tens of billions of profit, but the poor musicians, they haven't yet cottoned on to the fact that they're killing the music industry. So they really have to start sharing out some of these profits that they're making with the musicians who earn the money in the first place. So it's going in the right direction. What I do like about the whole model these days is that a band who's starting up, they can do their own promotion on social media. They can release their record on, as downloads on Amazon and iTunes and, or Apple Music, whatever it is. So they can manage everything themselves. And my son's band, Track 4, is just starting to, they're releasing their first EP. And it's great because they can do everything themselves. He's 19 years old and they don't have any money, but they don't need money. They don't have to go to a record company. And that side of things, I think, is where the model these days is very, very good, that young bands, if they manage it properly, can really promote themselves and start to have some success.
So what led to Lionheart's breakup in 1986?
We had a lot of problems. I mean, first of all, we didn't really break up because, we didn't have musical differences or anything like that. It was very, very much, we were disillusioned with the business. It was going back to what we were just talking about, the days when bands didn't have control of what they were doing. They didn't have artistic control or, any kind of creative control. You just went into your manager's office every week and he said, right, I've done this, and this, and you're off to LA next week and then, whatever. And he told you what you were doing. And we had a manager back in the late, we went through one or two management companies, and the one that we ended up with ripped us off right royally, to put it in a very British way. Yeah. We ended up having to put our hands in our pockets and come up with a huge amount of money in order to pay him off. And we were just gutted, to use another British word. We were so disappointed and we just stopped. We just thought there's no point in carrying on. And we kept in contact with each other and we'd see each other socially. And we always said, when the time is right, we're going to pick the band up again and get going again. And we had the chance in around the year 2000 to release a record in Japan, which was basically all of the demos that we'd done back in the 80s. And that was called Raiders of the Lost Archives. That came out in Japan. And then in 2016, we had the chance to get back together, playing a festival in the UK. And we just loved it. We said, we just got to carry on. This is a fantastic band. We should never really have stopped playing in the first place. But it was disillusionment. It was nothing to do with internally in the band. We all stay very close friends, but we were just very, very disappointed with the business. And so we just took a break for a while.
Do you have any fond memories of recording your first album, Hot Tonight?
Absolutely. We had a great time. We were packed off to LA and we stayed in the Oakwood Garden Apartments. We were recording at Sound City Studios, which is Dave Grohl's studio, which I think he's moved out somewhere else now. Yeah. It was a cult studio, and there were two studios there, and we had people, session guys like Steve Lukather and Jeff Becerra and all these people coming into the studio next door. We had Ronnie James Dio rehearsing in the rehearsal room next door. Joe Walsh was next door. We were just hanging out with the greats, and when we had a day off, we went to Disneyland. We sunbathed, we swam. We had an absolutely fantastic time. So no complaints there. Yeah, I mean, that's only fantastic memories for us.
That sounds like a great time. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories coming out of that studio where everybody was hanging and jumping in on everybody's recording sessions and taking a listen and stuff like that. Sounds like a very exciting time.
It was fantastic. It was one big happy family, and we just all got on with each other. And I remember Paula was the receptionist that everybody fell in love with, and it was just, everything was great about that whole period. We just had an absolutely fantastic time, and we missed it so much after we came back to the UK. And even now when we get together, we'll still have a laugh and a reminisce about those great times in Los Angeles.
Do you guys still have control over your first album, or is that something that the record label has sold off to somebody or something like that? Because like I mentioned to you when we weren't recording, is that I had to go to YouTube to find it.
But no, we don't really. I mean, it was recorded for CBS. what happened to I know it was released by a company called Rock Candy in Europe here. Back in 2000 and something or other, 2012, I think it might have been. I think they paid a license for the rights to release it, because I know the guy that runs the record company very well, a guy called Derek Oliver, and he did everything officially. But we don't know. I think the rights are still with CBS, so we don't really have any control of that.
While I was on YouTube listening to your album, I came across the video for "Die for Love." Oh. And I was wondering if you guys, I mean, you told me earlier your manager made all the decisions, but did you guys have any input on making this video? I mean, I absolutely loved the video.
It's a cult video. No, we had absolutely no creative input on that whatsoever. Again, we had a great time, but we were told, okay, there's a car coming to pick you up at such and such at early o'clock in the morning, taking you to the studio where you'll be filming this video. We had to go and we took dancing lessons. Can you believe? For 3 weeks, we did the video. Again, this was a decision from the manager. He said, no, I want you all to look good. So he sent us for dancing lessons at this kind of, disco dance place somewhere in London. And, I mean, I think we were as amazed as anybody, to see all these explosions going off, and so half of the stuff that you see on that video, we weren't acting. We were like, what was that explosion behind us? And we had I don't know if he's famous in the US, but there's a guy called Rick Mayall, who's a very famous comedian who unfortunately sadly died 6 years ago, and he played the part of the Mad Professor, and he did the Lionheart video before he became famous. So we had that added bonus that we had, a cult video. It's become a real cult on YouTube with this cult comedian, and I will watch it now. I just die of laughter. It's, we took it all very seriously back in those days as well. We thought we were acting quite well. We watch it now and it's horrendous. It's
brilliant. I love it. It's my new favorite video.
I agree. It's absolutely brilliant for all the wrong reasons. But
I love it. I love it. You guys you're in front of the Jeep and you got the soldiers running at you. You're playing the guitars, you're singing, and then you're kicking the guy as you're singing along. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
I think kicking that guy got us banned from MTV, but anyway, there you go.
That makes sense.
And I have to tell you a quick story about the helicopter at the end. There just happened to be, that wasn't planned, there just happened to be a guy that ran a helicopter port or a helicopter hire place next to where we were filming. And he saw all these lights and cameras and stuff. And so he came strolling over and he said, what's going on here? And, we said, we're filming a rock video. He said, do you fancy escaping in a helicopter? And we went, well, go on then. So he said, hang on, just give me 10 minutes. I'll go and get my chopper. So he went away, kept flying back. And he said, okay, use it how you will. So we quickly rewrote the script and said, okay, we escape with our heroine, our female hostage. Yeah. And we just ran into the helicopter. And that's the first time any of us have been in a helicopter. And he took off, flew around in a circle, and then brought us back again. It was great. I could tell you many stories about that, but I think it would go off the end of your radio program.
Yeah, absolutely. So after Lionheart, you moved on to the McAuley Schenker Group. What are some memories about that time that stand out for you?
I think, again, we had some great times touring. Again, it was a band where we all got on really, really well. Michael was as we all know, Michael's had his bad periods, but through all of the period that I was in the band, he was great. He was completely sober, totally focused. And, we did a couple of really good albums, I think, especially Save Yourself. Yeah, that was a great album. We did that with Frank Filippetti, who'd produced Survivor and just come from producing the Foreigner album, Agent Provocateur. And he was very good for us. He really enabled us to focus on what we were doing. And So that was a cracking album too. We toured with the Scorpions. We did a tour of the US with, we were supporting Great White. And then a song that I wrote with Robin called Anytime then became a hit record. And so we stopped the tour with Great White and we went out headlining. As a support band, we had the Black Crowes, who back then nobody had ever heard of. So that was also a great tour. And so that was another really great time in my life.
Yeah. Great music. The two albums you were on, awesome. Two of my favorites. I mean,
Yeah,
Anytime. Robin even sounds excellent, maybe even better singing that live today, which is amazing.
Well, I have to tell you a quick story about that. Back in the 80s when we were touring, he was struggling with those notes, with those high notes, because he reaches a high C. And he went to see an opera singer who taught him how to breathe properly, how to do proper warm-ups, how to strengthen your vocal cords. And he did these exercises religiously, and he is now singing better than he ever has sung. He's just absolutely amazes me, And when I listen to how he's singing Anytime now, these days, with how he sung it back then, you're right, he sings it better these days. It's fantastic.
Speaking of Schenker Fest, is it difficult putting together a production like that because you have so many people involved? You have the four singers, you have the band, just trying to everybody hitting their mark, everybody coming out doing their thing?
Yes, it is. For exactly the reason you say. I mean, everyone's been in the business a long time, so everyone's very, very cool. The egos aren't there anymore. And I think if the egos had a bit, if we'd have tried to do something like that 20, 30 years ago, it would never have worked. It would have lasted for, maybe one tour, and then it would have broken up because everybody would literally have been at each other's throats. But everyone's chilled out these days. Everybody's kind of very laid back about things, but very conscious about things like egos and making sure they stay where they belong. And, logistically, it's very difficult because literally the whole band is spread out over the whole world. So every time you want to rehearse the whole band, you have to fly people in from everywhere. So the way we do it is we get the core band together, which is myself, Michael, Bodo, and Chris. And we rehearse, the backing tracks together, and then we rehearse with the singers just before the tour. And we normally do it in the place where we do the first show. So we don't, we're flying everybody in there anyway. But on stage, it's very difficult because, you sometimes have 8 people on stage at the same time. And when you're 4 of them are singers who tend to wander around the whole stage as if they own it, it can get tricky. You have to remember where to be at certain times and think, oh, hang on, I've got Graham coming in behind me for this one. So I have to stay at the front or move back or, whatever. But obviously, the more you tour, the more you get used to it. But it is a very difficult show to put together. I have to say, my hat off to Michael, the way he handles everybody and deals with everybody is fantastic. And he's made me musical director in McAuley Schenker Fest. So I get together with the singers and we work out all of the harmonies and who's singing what part and all that kind of stuff. So, I do help him out in that respect. But, in terms of kind of managing everybody, McAuley Schenker does a fantastic job.
Awesome. All right, Steve, you have a good day.
Thank you, George. You too, and great to talk to you.
Hey, you as well.